The worst part about covering, playing, reviewing roll and writes on camera is the number of extremely tiny boxes and the inability to actually see what's going on. I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and despite that little frustration, we're going to do the best we can over here, trying to give you a good idea of how Three Sisters plays. Three Sisters, a game designed by Ben Pinchback and Matt Riddle, a game from Motor City Gameworks, who have designed a bunch of roll and writes, from Fleet the Dice game to, well, Motor City, to Three Sisters over here. This is their second roll and write, possibly their first one under their company, their new company, but this is a roll and write experience. Across 8 rounds, you're going to roll dice, taking actions with those dice, trying to maximize your efficiency as you manage the 2 separate mats full of goodness over here in order to find the interweaving connections, the escalating sense of planting, of abilities, of all those things, managing your fruit, managing your core planting engine, managing your shed full of abilities, your perennials, your apiary, a whole bunch of different options as you try to figure out the pathway toward the most points. The game structure is going to involve you rolling a number of dice equal to, variable depending on the number of players. It's basically the number of players plus 2. You're going to go ahead, and that's a very, very, very statistically unlikely roll. You're going to go ahead and put these dice down on the spots in the board. So, for instance, over here, because we roll 3 ones, we're going to put these ones over there. Again, this is statistically unlikely, but we're going to go with it. And then that's 6 over there. From there, the players are going to take actions, taking the action of the number of their die, as well as the action of the spot that the die is on. And then once both players have taken a die, they will take the action of the remaining spots. So, for example, with those ones over there, I can choose to take the one. Honestly, I'm kind of inclined to take the, do I want a apiary or fruit action? I want to get started off with some planting. I'm going to take that 6 over there, and I'm both going to plant in zone 6, which means I'm going to mark off 2 spots on the board to start getting some of these planting things up and running. Let's go ahead and grab that over here and that over here. There's a reason we're doing everything we're doing here. I'm filling in some spots. You can't see it, but understand that this whole section of the garden involves various plants that you are trying to grow up. And that's going to be a combination of planting, of rolling the dice, putting numbers into the zones, and then when you water, you're going to water zones, and everything on the board is going to grow. So the faster you get your planting up and running, the more you will benefit when it's time to grow, and everything you have planted until now starts growing. Additionally, because I took the plant or water zone, I'm going to fill in another 2 spots in that zone over there to again start getting my plants up and running over here. Great, we got an engine started. They're going to go ahead and take their own die. They'll take the apiary or fruit action. That's going to be filling in one of these boxes on this sidebar over here that have different aspects of how they give you points or abilities, give you options to planting or water, start getting different kinds of engines running at the same time. So for example, if you filled in your peach trees, you can actually get water actions every other spot. So you're trying to balance the points, you're trying to balance the goods chest you get. Raspberries will be chock full of goods, and goods can be used to get extra bonus actions, which is a whole part of your cascading engine. And once both players have taken their die, done their thing, you're going to get their spot remaining. So for example, I can go ahead and take my own apiary or fruit engine, and because I'm heavily going in for that watering aspect, I am going to start off with my peach trees over here, marking that off, and I have my peaches starting to run so that I can try to get a few more plants in here and then just start watering things as quickly as possible. Start getting things up and running as fast as I can. When all that's done, you're going to go ahead and take the action of the round, which depending on which of the 8 rounds you're in, have different actions. From rain, rain's going to happen 3 times in the game, and rain waters all your fields, causing it water, instead of watering a single field and growing everything in that field, rain will cause every single thing on your board to slowly rise up, which is very helpful because that all equals points. You're going to have things like the shed action. In the shed action, you can go ahead and grab an upgrade in the shed, and the shed is chock full of all the upgrades, which is a good time to talk about the various pathways on your board. You have your core engine of points over here, which is the garden, which is going to be twofold. The garden is going to be a chunk of points as everything grows. You're also around the edge of the garden, you're going to have the opportunity to lock in these flowers and goods. You're going to get goods as these things hit the top track, and goods is going to be this chart down here that translates into extra actions as you go. You're also going to go ahead and have perennials, which as you mark off, as you have the spots on both sides of a perennial, which they're circling the board over here, and you can get them from a few other places, but when you have these perennials over here, what you're going to do is you're going to fill in the correlating track from the daffodils to the tulips to whatever track you want over here, slowly escalating them up to, again, get different benefits. Some things will help your fruit garden, some things will help you get more stuff in the shed, some things will just help you get more goods depending on how well you're doing on certain fruit tracks. There's a whole bunch of different options as far as how these 6 different tracks give you stuff, as well as if you make it to the top of each track, you get anywhere from 1 point on the low end, although that's really depending on the number of fruit you have, but anywhere between 4 to 12 points for getting to the top of a track, which can be a huge chunk of points in this game. Then you have your apiary over here, which is a little path where you're going to slowly move up the apiary and then choose these different lanes to grow out into. The apiary requires a bit of an investment to really be worth the time you're putting into it, but if you do heavily invest in the apiary, you can get a bunch of tracks going up very quickly. You can get a bunch of goods, a bunch of points, a bunch of extra planting, watering, and fruit actions. The apiary can be very rewarding if you truly spend time investing into it. And then you have your shed, my personal favorite part of the game, in which you're going to grab upgrades. Upgrades that will give you potentially points, upgrades that will give you extra things. So for instance, we have the shovel over here, which you can spend 3 compost for an extra action. Compost is going to be this extra thing you can earn during the game that will let you modify the value of a die, turning a 5 into a 6, a 5 into a 4, as you spend compost to adjust the value of the die. But if you find yourself able to work with the dice you get, you will find that you can spend the compost along with the shovel to get extra actions, which is a lot more fun for me personally. You'll have things like the seed spreader. When planting, plant up to 3 crops. That's going to require four investments into the shed, but once you do so, once you invest 4 times into the seed spreader, you're basically getting a full 50% more planting whenever you take the plant action, which can be absolutely huge. Combine an early investment in the seed spreader along with an investment into lots of planting and then some rain, and you can find yourself overflowing with more points than you know what to do with. But then again, 14 other strategies can also find you in the same position. So that's the fun and the charm of these styles of games to begin with. That aspect of having enough interweaving tracks and mechanisms that you don't see a clear pathway forward, and trying different strategies, attempting different ways of playing while combating other players who are doing the same thing and fighting you for the same dice. That's where the fun of Three Sisters comes in. Rinse and repeat for 8 rounds, add up your scores, which can get pretty high in this game, anywhere from like 80 to 150 points, and that's basically Three Sisters. So, let's talk about the game. Ease of play. The game is pretty easy. The rulebook is fairly short, not a lot to go through. Some of it's going to be the solo stuff and whatnot, but you can get through this game and you can read the rulebook in maybe 10, maybe 15 minutes. You can teach it in maybe under 10 minutes, or easier if you've played roll and writes, obviously, but the basic round mechanism is pretty clear, and past that it just comes down to explaining what each of these spots do, and then also explaining each spot in the shed. That's going to be the biggest barrier over here. Not just the shed, honestly. The shed, the fruit, the perennials, the apiary. You kind of have to go through each of the different aspects and say, now that I've taught you the core concept of how to play, which takes 3 minutes, I actually have to teach you what each thing does, and then more importantly, you kind of have to start playing and figure it out. This is one of those games where I do recommend just playing the game, charging confidently forward, not really worrying about who's winning, and then either resetting it entirely once you have a good feel for it, or just write off the first game as a learning experience, and whoever you taught it to, make sure you tried new strategies that you never thought would work, because there's a lot going on. Again, the game is not complicated, but there's enough abilities, there's enough stuff, there's enough tracks that playing it that first time is a little bit overwhelming, and to a certain extent it is easier if you just shut out all the noise. If you just focus on something, charge forward, and then take your next game and your third game and your fourth game to start understanding the nuanced strategy aspects of things as opposed to just how to play the game. As far as player count, this is a 1 to 4 player game. I've played this at 2 and 3 players. I have not played the solo mode yet, and as far as a 4 player game, I'm happy to play it at 4 players. I just haven't actually had it happen. The game is pretty fast paced as far as the actions. There is a bit of slowdown with players. We'll talk about that more shortly, but I would say the difference in time between a 3 and a 4 player game is not going to be significant. So yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it at any of those player counts. I don't have a strong preference for one or the other. They both 2 and 3 players were fine. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with what I like, which is most of the stuff I kind of talked about as I went. Three Sisters has interweaving tracks and a ton of different pathways to pursue, a ton of strategies to try to think through, is this the optimal way to proceed forward? There's a lot going on in this game. There's a lot, every single option in the shed is a possible option for how you want to explore and build out your engine. And what happens in this game is, as you start playing, you feel like you will not get enough done in 8 rounds, but if you've played any roll and write games, from Ganshun Clever, from Fleet, from Hadrian's Wall, if you've played any of these complex interweaving track roll and writes, you know that things tend to escalate and pick up as you play, and that's certainly true in Three Sisters as well. You get a lot done in the shed, and you have a lot of strategies as far as how you can drive your engine forward, as far as which pathways you want to pursue. And that strategy choices and the choice you have to make around the strategy does not stop in the shed. It extends to the apiary, it extends to the fruit areas, it extends to perennials versus points. Are you just trying to go for raw points? I mean, the amount of points you can get by fully planting your fields and just charging forward with points and points alone is huge. Also, it's just points. Maybe there's other ways you can cascade this with that and pursue that strategy and add this. If you heavily go into goods, you're going to get extra bonus actions, and the fun part of extra bonus actions is you have more control over what those actions are, and that gives you even more of a reason to sit there and say, well, if I can get a whole bunch of goods, I can trade those in for a series and a sequence of actions that perfectly align with my strategy. Or you can just charge confidently up the apiary track and start getting planting, fruit times 3, plant or water any zone, chunks of points, 5, 5, and 8. That's 18 points from 4 pips over there. That's a lot of stuff you can get as you charge up the apiary, or maybe you just invest in fruit. Combining your peaches with your fruit track on the left side over here gives you an interesting combo where you can just get a ton of extra goods for every peach harvest you have. There's a ton of ways you can try to figure out where to put your stuff, in what order to put your stuff, and with what shed augmentations and other options along the way. That gives you a lot of ways to try different strategies in this game, to try different things that you're going to try to go for, to see what makes the most sense, to see which strategies paid off last time, to see which tweaks you can make to those strategies to try to slowly get more and more points in the game. And then there's competition over the dice as well, because this is not a solo, I mean, it's a game you could play solo, but it's not when you're playing it with other players, it's not a solo experience. There is competition over the dice. There is competition over, you took that shed spot I want. You went to the farmer's market when I wanted to go to the farmer's market because I've been confidently building everything up so that I get the most return on the farmer's market, but that only helps if I can actually go to the farmer's market. And so all these aspects are things you're trying to be mindful of, are things you're trying to figure out what makes the most sense to do. Locking up your goods all the way to the top and heading to the farmer's market again and again and again is a valid strategy, but it only works if you can get to the farmer's market. So there's competition over the dice as the rounds tick along, and there's lots of cascading rewards for better and for worse. The cascading rewards are going to be those turns where you get enough stuff happening that you kind of have to just tell everyone to hold on and wait as you figure out how to take your actions in a way that you're actually using them all. You just moved up 4 tracks, you got 3 bonus actions, you're going to be moving up the perennials, those are going to give you bonus actions, you're going to use some of those in the shed, that's going to turn around, it's going to help you as you go up the fruit track. The fruit track is giving you goods, you're going to lock those goods in, but now you have 2 bonus actions to spend on anything, you're going to move up the apiary track, that gives you another fruit. You will have those turns in this game. You will absolutely have, across the 8 rounds of play, there'll be several times where you just get 7 things in a row, and you have to track all that stuff, which is a little bit of work, but it's immensely rewarding at the same time. It just gives you that fun little, hits of dopamine as you get another action and another action. You move up another track and you unlock another action. Meanwhile, the other players are all rolling their eyes at you, waiting for your turn to be over, and wondering if you're cheating, just so they can go ahead and take their turn, which brings me directly to the things that I don't like in the game, which is that. That is both the thing that I like the most in the game and the thing I dislike the most in the game. The cascading actions that you get can result in a significant amount of downtime for other players, or to put it more specifically, the cascading actions they get can result in a significant amount of downtime for me. Because of the fact that the turns in which you get your cascading actions may be different than the turns in which they get their cascading actions, you will definitely have times where I'm like, okay, great, and I'm done. And then they're like, wait, nope, just unlock 2, give me a second, okay, nope, now I need to think about where to spend my good. And the decision point of where they're going to spend their good, where they're going to spend their extra action, that doesn't bother me at all when I'm doing my own things. But when I'm sitting there waiting, and they're like, I could go to the shed, I could unlock the string trimmer, that can be an extra 6 points. Well, in round 5, I think there's better things I could do with it. You know what, let me go ahead with the wheelbarrow. That would give me a good after a shed action. And then I've unlocked another good, and that'll give me another thing. Okay, wait, no, I just unlocked another bonus good. Give me 2 minutes. I'll be right there with you guys. That does happen in this game. And while I love the bonus actions and the cascading elements of what you get, that is a slight irritation as far as the fact that your downtime will vary as to when it enters play. And then along with that, it can be difficult to track everything that's happening on those turns. It is not going... When I play this game, multiple times I've played this game, I've had those turns, and then I've wondered when I was done with those turns. When it was my turn, when I was having all the fun and everyone else was waiting, I have sat there and wondered, did I actually do everything that I got this turn? Because I, sitting as a person who's taken the actions, I feel the pressure of everyone else waiting, so I'm trying to be a little faster and a little less careful with those extra stuff, with all the cascading stuff that's happening. But that also means I kind of finish my turn and I'm like, wait, did I take that extra action? I don't know, and I just don't take it at that point because I don't want to cheat, but then I sit in there wondering the whole game whether I lost an extra action that could have had its own cascading returns as the game goes. So, love the whole aspect, don't get me wrong, but it's an aspect that I love that comes with a downside. As far as what I can see others not liking, the game, to a certain extent, has a lot of repetitive elements to it. While there are different pathways you can pursue in terms of what strategies you go for, the core mechanism of planting and watering is likely going to be central to every game you play, and so the game, I find, as you play through Three Sisters, you have a lot of things that are the same every single game, and then a lot of adjustments or nuances to that core engine that are going to be different. So there's a degree of repetitiveness to this game that makes it so that I don't want to play it 4 times in a single day. I don't want to play it 4 times in a single session. I want to sit down, I want to play it, and then I want to play something else, and I'll come back to it in 2 weeks. So I like the game a lot, but it does have that slight repetitiveness to that aspects. And second of all, you kind of have to lock in your strategies early. That's a big deal as far as how this game goes. Many of the options you want to go for, you can't go halfway into certain things. You can't go halfway into planting and then hope it works out and the rain comes and you water enough. You can't go halfway into the perennials or halfway into certain strategies in the shed or the apiaries or the fruit. You kind of have to decide fairly early which pathways you're going to pursue more aggressively and then charge confidently towards those pathways, or you will find yourself with not as many points as other players. So it's kind of you have to lock in early. There's room for pivoting and adjustment, and there's room for all that, but the core aspect of what you're trying to do, you have to get in early. As far as final thoughts on Three Sisters, I like the game. I like it a lot. This is another solid one from the designers of, well, Fleet the Dice Game and Motor City Gameworks, or Motor City Games. Motor City, I think it's just called Motor City. But I like this one a lot, and it fits nicely into their repertoire. I haven't decided which ones of these I like the most, but Three Sisters is a solid 4 out of 5 for me. It has those interweaving tracks, it has those cascading turns, it has that aspect of you think you won't get enough done, and before you know it, you have 142 points, and everyone's like, how in the world did you even do that? And that is fun. That is satisfying. It is satisfying to pursue different strategies in the shed, and for instance, that seed spreader I talked about, my first game of Three Sisters, I played with the seed spreader because I felt that 50% more planting was just too big a thing to pass up. And it was great, and it was excellent, and I was like, the seed spreader is clearly the dominant strategy. And the next time I played, I tried a different strategy, did not use the seed spreader, and I got more points than the first time. And I like the fact that even the things that I think are clearly the most powerful aren't necessarily the best, or aren't necessarily the best depending on what I combine them with. There's a lot to pursue here. There's a lot of strategies, and they're not always obvious at first glance, and it's a lot of fun learning those things. It's a lot of fun planting your entire garden and seeing those points slowly rise up. 3 rains across the course of the game is a lot of just general stuff flowing into your garden, but you have to augment that along with additional waterings to ensure that you actually get everything you need. There's a lot of fun to be had as you figure out the perfect and optimal way to build everything out. It's just rewarding. As far as other game recommendations, obviously Fleet the Dice Game and Motor Cities and all of that, but really I would say Hadrian's Wall if you want an escalation of this format. If you want an escalation of the most intense, complicated, nuanced, multiple sheet roll and write with intricate cross-weaving everything, Hadrian's Wall certainly takes it to the next level. Whereas if you're just looking for more of the same, well, along with Three Sisters, there's Fleet the Dice Game and Motor City on Kickstarter. You may still be able to late pledge for it. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you found this video helpful, and as always, have a good one.